This is the Bible Ranger. Today we're going to be talking about Jesus' Inner Circle, Disciples, Episode 42, Part 2. And the first group is going to be Peter, Andrew, James, and John. I think I could never be like them. So how can God choose a person like me? All right, that's a good question. So what kind of people does God choose? All right, the disciples started out as regular men with lots of issues, but they ended up as great men of God. So as we look into their lives, one by one, we're going to put ourselves into their place, whether they have good qualities or bad qualities. All right, let's go on. The first one is going to be Simon Peter. Now, he was impulsive, he was strong, he was bold, he was dynamic, he was the leader. Now, he was the brother of Andrew, which is also in this group. We'll talk about him shortly. And he was the son of John. Now, this John here is nothing to do with John the Baptizer, or also called John the Baptist, or John the Disciple. This is just his father's name. And since they didn't have last names, they associated you with your father. Now, he was born in Bethsaida. And he was a fisherman by trade. And he worked alongside James and John. Probably knew them for years. Now, he experienced the highest highs and the lowest lows. Talking about Peter. Now, for example, he denied Christ 3 times, but he walked on water. That's incredible. So God revealed to him that Jesus was the Son of God. Then, moments later, he was used by Satan. He was trying to stop Christ from going to Jerusalem and getting crucified for us. And you would think that's a great thing, but obviously it wasn't. Now, he asked the most questions. He would ask, Lord, explain this to me. And then he would ask something like, why did this fig tree wither? And, Christ would give the explanation. And thank the Lord that he did, because he asked so many questions, we know the answer to a lot of things that we would be thinking of. All right, so also in the book of Acts, the first 12 chapters is mainly about Peter and what he did and how the Lord used him. Now, when Jesus told Peter how he was to die, of course, Peter being Peter, he said, well, what about John? So, by the way, Peter means a stone, okay? And some of these names, I'll give you the definitions of what they are. So, but in Luke 4:38, Peter is the only disciple that we know of that is actually married. I mean, they could have all been married, but we just don't know of it. Now, in 1 Corinthians 9:5, Peter traveled with his wife. And in Galatians 2:7, the gospel, Peter was the main disciple. His main set of people was to the Jews. But even though he was to the Jews, he was the first one to bring the gospel to the Gentiles. And Gentiles are basically people that are non-Jews. There was a man that was, this part is in the book of Acts, that he was an Italian centurion called Cornelius. And the Lord, he loved the Lord very much. He prayed very much with the Lord. The Lord loved him. And yet Peter was to visit him. And before he did, the Lord gave him a vision and everything. And he had to break his prejudices. And it came out to be a good meeting. So, after Jesus, Peter is mentioned the most out of everybody else in the Gospels. And he was martyred by the crucifixion, okay? And he said, no, I'm not worthy to be crucified like my Lord, so I want to be crucified upside down. He said he wasn't worthy. And obviously nobody is, right? And that's why he said that. So he died in Rome by Caesar Nero, and may have died at the same time as Paul's beheading. Now, that's not in the Bible. That might be through some historical books, but that was something that came from that study. Now, Andrew, the second one in the first group. Now, Andrew means manly, and Andrew is Peter's brother, also a fisherman, and obviously also the son of John. Now, Andrew was an early follower of John the Baptizer, or John the Baptist. He didn't have a problem bringing Gentiles to Jesus, because there's a few episodes. There's an episode where these two Greek men, Gentiles, right? They wanted to speak to Jesus. So they happened to speak to Philip. And Philip brought those two men to Andrew, and Andrew brought them to Jesus. So apparently Philip thought, well, if you want to see Jesus, you're going to have to get through Andrew. So Andrew was humble, okay? You got to realize that he spent his whole life under the shadow of his brother, Simon Peter. Simon Peter just came in there and took over, and this is my little brother now. So Andrew knew that once he introduced Peter to Jesus, Peter, because of his leadership, would end up running the group. And it's like, well, now I'm not that important anymore. Now it's all my big brother. But he was humble enough to say, no, this is the right thing to do. We found the Messiah, and brother, I want you to meet him. So compared to Peter, Andrew was not dominant, but he was passionate for Christ. So he might not be dynamic like his brother, but he attracted many to the Lord. He also, there was other incidences where he did a lot of attracting to. Andrew, continuing. So he was part of the inner circle of the first group. But out of those four men, Peter, Andrew, James, and John, he was the least of them. Because he seems like, no question, the favorite were the other three. All right, he also was martyred by crucifixion like his brother. But he died a little different. I'll explain that in a second. But he's recorded, not in the Bible, but to say this about the cross that he was in. He says, O cross, most welcome and loved for, with a willing mind, joyful and desirously, I come to you, being a scholar of him which did hang on you, because I have always been your lover and yearn to embrace you. So that's recorded, that he said that. That's pretty tough to know that you're ready to get crucified and you're saying words like that. So Andrew's cross was a little bit different. He actually got crucified on a cross that looked like an X. Now, the next one, it would be James. It's called James the Greater because there's another James in the 12 disciples, and he's called the Lesser. Not that he was a better man, but he just had a higher position, that's all. Now, his name derives in Hebrew from Jacob, but when it goes to a translation of a little bit of Latin and a little bit of Greek, it turns into James. All right, so this was the elder brother of John. Now, this is John, the famous John the Beloved, okay? Not the Baptist or the Baptizer. They were called, James and John were called the sons of Zebedee. Okay, that was kind of their last name. So in Mark 1:20, they left their father's business to follow Jesus. That would be Zebedee. Zebedee was a man of influence. Okay, I believe that he financed Jesus. That's not in the Bible, but there's an incident in the Bible where the mother is asking Jesus that, can one of my sons be in your right hand and the other one be on your right when you get to glory? And Jesus says to her, like, look, you don't even know what you're asking. So I don't think she would be as bold to say that if she was not supporting the ministry of Jesus. That's just my opinion. So he had leadership qualities, but was overshadowed by Peter. Everybody was. So he was one of the most inner circle, even of the first group. And he was, along with John, he was called the sons of thunder by Jesus himself. That was in Mark 3:17. All right, James the Great, all right? In Mark 5:21 and several verses, there was a daughter there, a girl, from a man named, it was a priest named Jairus. And James was allowed to see her being raised from the dead. The reason I say that, not all the disciples actually saw her. There was a lot of people around her that were unbelieving, and Jesus said, oh, she's just sleeping. And people like, what are you, basically, they started laughing at Jesus. And it's like apparently you don't know what a dead person looks like. And Jesus kicked everybody out. But James was there. He actually saw that resurrection of this little girl. And Jesus, he also saw the transfiguration on the Mount of Olives for Jesus. And that would be the only three people that saw her. He saw the Peter, James, and John. So this son of thunder, he was the first one to be martyred. Only 14 years after he started his ministry, he was put to death. And it was most likely because of his fiery, overnight, passionate attitude, which is probably annoying. Now, when Herod imprisoned some disciples, including Peter, James was beheaded. He wasn't crucified, but he was beheaded. And like I said, only 14 years after his ministry. Now John, the beloved, not to be confused with John the Baptist or baptizer. All right, brother of James, the son of Zebedee, sons of thunder, just like his brother. Now you might think that John is a meek person, a quiet person, effeminate, skinny guy, but no. He was a very fiery guy. He actually, when he was witnessing 2x2 out there was some people that were rejecting Christ. And he basically said, you want us to call fire from the sky and devour these people? It's like, whoa, Jesus, like, calm down. I'm not here for that, okay? So they were very fiery, very in your face, basically. So he was also ambitious. And this is the incident that I mentioned earlier when they were asking, can we sit on your right hand and on your left hand when we get to heaven? And his mother actually asked that question. Now he was zealous. He was explosive, but not as much as James was. James lived the shortest and John lived the longest. And he was the one that laid on Jesus' chest. And you think about it, that looks kind of weird as a guy. You're leaning on another guy's chest, And of course, people of bad virtue, they'll say some crazy stuff about that. I'm not even going to get into that. However, if you think about it in a spiritual sense, he is sitting next to the Son of God, basically God himself. And he's hearing the heartbeat of God. It's like, I think I would be doing the same thing. And he wrote the most about love. You got to realize this guy was a son of thunder, but through Christ and through the Holy Spirit, he just added that passion with love. All right, in the book of John 18:15, John seems to have connections with authorities or priests in that synagogue, or Sanhedrin, more to be more exact. He was in the courts, in there, actually in the action, while Jesus was actually on trial. And Peter was outside getting warm. This is where he denies Christ 3 times. Peter. Now, John, like I said, he was a hothead, okay? It upset him when another person that was not the 12 that were casting out demons, and he was really upset, like, you're not allowed to do this, basically. And Jesus is like, no, don't be doing that, okay? He corrected him. But with John, when you mix that passion that he had with love, it becomes a strong virtue. And you can see this in his writings later on in 1 John, 2 John, and 3 John. Also, John was the only one that was not martyred, okay? He lived to be about 100 years old. Now, there's a legend out there, not in the Bible, that says that they tried to boil him alive to, kill him, martyr him, and it didn't work. So they exiled him to the island of Patmos. And that's where he wrote the famous book of Revelation, which I can't wait to get into that, but we're not here yet. All right. Love above all. Now, John was known as a disciple or the apostle of love, right? But only because he learned from the best, Jesus Christ. Now, Jesus died for you, but it means nothing if you don't repent and you follow him. He died for you, but you have to do that first. Now, if you found this video to be helpful, please subscribe and you thumbs up and share it. And there's going to be several more of the other disciples coming up, and as they come up, see how you can fit in there, okay? Because these men are not untouchables; they are touchables, and we all can associate with one or two or three or more of them. So this is the Bible Ranger, keeping the Bible simple yet rich in content. Thank you very much.